This panel, we are going to explore the root causes of prostitution, why it is a violent system, and why it intersects with all of the other forms of violence and discrimination known to our societies. Prostitution is at the intersection of sexism and patriarchy, also racism and colonialism, the class system, poverty and capitalism, disability, displacement. In every situation of violence, when the vulnerability of women is increased, that's when they fall prey of this violent system. Prostitution is just giving the possibility that human rights and human dignity are deprived for the women and girls who are in difficult conditions. So this is all that we are going to explore today. I think we're missing one speaker, actually. I don't know, Alexine, is she here? Oh, okay. Sorry, come. There is a chair here. Just come and we will have a chair. Sorry, Alexine. We started without you. But yeah, I will give first, I think, the floor to Candida. Please introduce yourself. No, you don't want to start? Yeah? Okay. So that is finished. So Candida, please introduce yourself, and you will be speaking a little bit about your experience as a survivor and also the intersection with the consequences on the lives of women in prostitution.
Well, first, sorry for my English. It's horrible, my English. I'm Candida, and I'm a survivor of prostitution. Half of my life, I was victim of rape, of physical violations. I was trafficked too. I was in prison. I have no house for now 15 years. I live in the streets. I was in prison. I was raped by a policeman in prison. And because my English is not very well, I go it. Prostitution is violence in itself. Prostitution is an attack on the integrity of the body for the women who suffer it. For example, when men pays you to penetrate you, and after this one another, and yet another, you feel reduced to your orifice. It's like me. They penetrate you with their hands, objects, their penis. You became their object, like a programmed doll. You have to show that you love it, even if it hurts you. You don't have the right to complain. An object can feel any emotion. So you have to show them they are the best. If you don't do it, you risk beating, because you just hurt them in their pride of men. The prostitution was undermined my self-esteem and self-confidence. I came to feel that I am no better than it. Some consequence on a woman's health: psychological problems, low self-esteem, insomnia, anxiety, phobias, depression, dissociation, disorders of sensitivity of the body. There is a trauma. You can touch me because I'm afraid. If you touch me, you aggress me. Don't. It's a real disease. Difficult to be attention. C'est un post-traumatic shock, alcoholism, drug addiction, suicide, social stigma, gynecological problems, AIDS. I'm HIV positive because the prostitution. Cancer, 100 pregnancy too. There are many maladies. Various health problems: arthritis, fibromyalgia, anorexia, bulimia, feeding detention, traumatic problems, injuries in the vaginal or area, urinary incontinence. It's me. I have almost, yes. The health consequences of women who have been prostitutes are accentuated by a lack of access to the health care system and the harms experienced when they do so use. Now, human social life and professional future is compromised by fear of being found by former pimps, fear of running into turner clients and being under their authority at work, fear of being disclosed to children, spouse, friends, parents, fear of losing custody of children due to the past, fear that people from backgrounds will find them or recognize them, the return of the memory of traumatic situations, nightmares, difficulty finding a job, lack of education, lack of CV, the difficulty of being taken seriously and being seen more as a criminal writer than a survivor by social service, legal problems, some even have criminal records. I have one, two. Even in the absence of physical violence, research shows that having a personal and repeat sexual intercourse, the without feeling cause people to, sorry for my English, desensitive by relationships to their body and their emotions, a schizophrenia phenomenon, which promotes depression and suicidal ideation. Thank you. Prostitution is a violence deeply linked to all violence against wives. It is an intrinsic violence which, moreover, can be associated with other types of violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, poverty, sexual pornography, etc., etc., etc. I want to say you that all of this I have. I don't sleep. I need a treatment to sleep. With my husband, sometimes when he touch me, my head remember all the rapes or the violence I have in the past. But I don't know. I'm here and I go to forward because it's my war. It's the war of all the person who are doing prostitution, all the survivors, and also for the women think prostitution is only on the streets. Prostitution is only in the house. No, it's not true. It's many kinds of prostitution. Thank you, and sorry for my English.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Candida. And your English is not a problem. We understood you completely. Thank you for your testimony, for coming all the way to Brussels. What you're saying relates a lot to the topics that were addressed also this morning. Prostitution is violence. The violence is perpetrated by the buyer of sexual acts, by the pimps, by the police, by the government, and it's part of a continuum of violence because many women in prostitution, they've experienced violence before entering and after exiting. So it's very important to address all of this, and thank you. And now what we want to also highlight is how the women facing these horrible forms of violence are the women and girls who are most vulnerable for many reasons, including poverty, which is a huge issue and a huge risk factor for entering prostitution. Rachel, do you want to address this?
Thank you. That's one of the things that I think we need really to clarify in this movement, because of course, poverty renders any woman vulnerable to prostitution, but we need to be really clear that poverty is not a cause of prostitution. There is a difference. There's no amount of poverty on this earth that could cause a woman to be in prostitution were it not for the male demand that capitalizes on and takes advantage of that vulnerability inherent to an impoverished situation in life. I was 14 when I left home. I was 15 when I got involved in street-based prostitution, and I spent 7 years involved in various forms, mostly indoor after that. And I'll tell you, I have a few different thoughts going on in my head right now, and they're kind of jostling for position. Because I've been annoyed most of the day. Because as we were standing outside the Parliament earlier on today, and we were campaigning and making some noise and waving our placards, this young, well-heeled idiot cycled by on her bicycle and took the time to inform us all that it wasn't called prostitution. I do believe it's actually called sex work, let us all know. So here's a whole load of feminist campaigners and a good number of survivors sprinkled in amongst them. And this well-heeled middle-class idiot thinks she's going to tell us what prostitution ought to be called. Now, these two issues do marry in together, by the way. I'll get there. You see, here's what it was. Back in the early 90s, when I got involved in prostitution, it was wall-to-wall impoverished young girls, most of us from broken homes, including myself. There were every kind of vulnerability you could think of. We were all Irish. We were all from an impoverished areas, mostly of Dublin City, but also some country girls in amongst us. These were in the years before there was inward migration into Ireland. Things have changed a lot now. You see a good 96% and upwards of the women involved in prostitution in Ireland now are migrant women, many of them trafficked. And it's rampant wall-to-wall vulnerabilities everywhere you look in prostitution. It was then, it is now. It's never been any different in that respect. But since it's been fashionable for a good 5 or 10 years now to talk about what offends us, and to behave as if some people behave as if they had some kind of God-given right not to be offended. So I thought to myself, well, I may as well take a feather out of their cap then, since that's what's on offer. I feel deeply, deeply offended that middle-class women have the bald-faced rage and gall to talk to those of us who are from extremely vulnerable backgrounds, socio-economic deprivation, racism, all sorts of situations, including rampant sexual abuse in childhood and adolescence, that have rendered us vulnerable enough to be targets, because that's what we're really talking about here. We are talking about women who are walking targets, and we are being spoken to by women who are fortunate enough not to have had their positions in life, not to have occupied their spaces in life, not to have laid up one single time in a brothel's bed, and actually think that they can cycle past us on a clear summer's morning and tell us how we ought to be referring to the situation that we remember and that they can't even imagine. And I just want to say, since I'm sitting here in a room full of people, and I know this is being live streamed, middle-class women seriously need to shut up and listen. They really do, all of them. Because we have, I shouldn't go as far as to say all of them. We have really good colleagues and allies and supporters inside this movement who are from all across the class spectrum. But when I met on the coming in the other direction, on the opposite side of the political fence, for middle-class women who can say to me, in all seriousness, and they really are serious, when they look us straight in the face, knowing that we were dragged up on the housing estates of Ireland or the UK or wherever across Europe, knowing that we never had the experience of seeing what it was to live in a home where there was a regular paycheck coming in the door, knowing that we're coming from situations where there was mental illness in the family, alcoholism, all sorts of drug abuse and substance abuse, and from parents who very often themselves were traumatized and vulnerable and deprived in a whole variety of ways. Now, I am at this point not prepared to be spoken to like that anymore. I just am not. We have one particular idiot in Ireland who was raised in one of the most well-heeled parts of the country, famous for its beauty, a little town called Clonakilty in West Cork. She's the daughter of artisan butchers, and she genuinely believes and takes every opportunity in recent years to talk about how prostitution ought to be legalized, how we ought to legalize every pimp in the land, and all will be fine and well if we do so. Now, to me, it's like a modern day version of Marie Antoinette, you know, only instead of let them eat cake, it's let them eat cock. That's what we're really talking about. And I really think that we need to take a firm stand and say, no, if that's how you feel, that's fine, eat it yourself.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And we have Luba here, who also really focuses in her work on countering the argument, because we often hear from our opponents, the ones who want the legalization of sex work and pimping, that, okay, poor women, migrant women, they don't have a lot of opportunities and choices, so it's better than nothing that they can be in prostitution. And this is really false argument, and I think you'll have a whole analysis to share with us about this.
Thank you. So I am a survivor of Eastern European background, and I want to talk about this argument that what if the poverty in some parts of Europe is so extreme that it pays for a woman to make a living from prostitution. And I want to say that poor women are getting rich in prostitution is one of the biggest lies ever. I was in prostitution as an adolescent. And since exiting, I have been studying prostitution as an activist, an interviewer, a writer. And I have never, ever encountered a single woman who got rich or even financially stable in prostitution. I have met many ill, deprived, destroyed, desperate, but not anyone financially stable or rich from prostitution. That said, the prostitution business does make a lot of money. According to one estimate, more than $180 billion is spent annually on the sex trade globally. It sounds like a lot, right? But not exactly, because according to a very conservative estimate, there are more than 10 million women in prostitution worldwide, meaning that a woman in prostitution should be earning approximately $18,000 per year. And even this modest income does not belong entirely to women, because anyone from any pimp pays at least half to him, right? So suddenly it doesn't sound that much. Now, is there any truth in the lie that women can make a lot of money in prostitution? Maybe only partially, because a very young woman in her first years in prostitution can produce large sums of money. But then pimps, guards, drug dealers, exploitative boyfriends, have many of them, they're also getting their cut. The longer a woman stays in prostitution, the older she gets, the less she earns. And something that Rachel said, very correct, that many women assume that impoverished women just choose to be prostitutes rather than a cashier in a local supermarket. But even this is a lie. Most women in prostitution are trafficked, coerced, or conned, groomed, or manipulated otherwise. Pimps who operate in European Union target women of a certain type, very young, very poor, Eastern European or from the global South, very naive. They do not know any foreign language, only their local language. And they paint a rosy picture of huge incomes, luxury hotels, yachts and brands and charming sex buyers from which they can choose anyone they like. And the women are so, you have no idea how naive the women are in the small towns of Eastern Europe. They don't know English, they don't know any language. They cannot check the credibility of these stories. Many believe they are going to marry someone or they are going to work in some nightclub as a waitress. They believe claims that they will make huge income and interesting job. They believe it, and they don't even think that it is prostitution. Anyway, these women come from dire poverty to the brothels of dominant economies of Europe, Germany, Netherlands, Switzerland, and now also Belgium. Not only do the women not know the language of the country they are going to, they don't know their basic human rights. They didn't read CEDAW. Most are deeply ashamed of what they are doing, and they would rather die than let their families know. So this leaves them with no one to ask for help. They're isolated. Women who do manage somehow to exit prostitution and return home, what happened then? They often have the entire list that I mentioned: post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, drug and alcohol addictions, physical injuries, some other dysfunction. The list is much longer, so remember. In those countries, they have no rehabilitation frameworks, no adequate welfare services, no comprehensive physical and mental health. We will not go into anecdotal stories. The average woman comes out of prostitution in a much worse situation than her starting point, financially, physically, and mentally. But now the same people say, but if that poor woman actually chooses to be in prostitution, no matter why, no matter how limited her choices are, she chose prostitution. Why shouldn't we make it legal? At least we will make it a little bit safer for her. What's about that argument? So some Western European countries, as we all know, have legal prostitution. That said, and in every one of those countries, the black market is much bigger. In addition, legalization does not make prostitution attractive to women or even bearable. Evidence tells us that most women in prostitution in economically dominant countries of Europe are from Eastern Europe or the global South. Why is that? Because less vulnerable women from dominant economies of Europe who can avoid it, they don't do prostitution. So framing the situation as safe conditions is cynical. And because much research documents deception, coercion, and suffering experienced by women in prostitution, also in legal prostitution, in legalized brothels. And as foreigners, they are not entitled to social services, even if they desperately want to exit. Sometimes they are not entitled to health services. They fear deportation because many of them are undocumented. They don't want to ask authorities for help because they fear that maybe their families will know. So they are isolated and they're helpless. So bottom line, the legal sex industry with licensed brothels is a normalized mechanism of sexual abuse of vulnerable women from Eastern Europe. For what? For what? To provide sex acts on demand for men from Western Europe and to make profits from pimps. It is also unfair that the burden of treating these women falls in the end on economically and politically unstable countries. Those countries are taking care of the devastation created by legal sex industry in the dominant economies of Europe. So if someone is taking this European integration seriously, it should be remembered that everyone's human rights should be protected, and the poor, vulnerable, and the very young Eastern European women cannot be discriminated.
you again, Luba, for being with us, for sharing all of this. And as you, sorry?
There's chairs up here.
Oh, yeah, you can come there now.
Here,
Yeah.
chairs.
Please, no problem. And yeah, like you mentioned, one of the vulnerability factors, and like Rachel said, not root cause, because none of these vulnerability factors indeed will amongst to prostitution or sexual exploitation without the male demand and without the pimping and all of this organized system. But one of the vulnerability factors is youth. There is data from the European Parliament stating that 75% of the women in prostitution in Europe are between 13 years old and 25 years old, so very young. And there is a relationship between this youth and sexual violence experienced by girls, unfortunately, during their young age, and the vulnerability to prostitution. And I think this is something, Alexine, that you want to address. So I will give you the mic.
Make sure to speak on the mic because otherwise it goes to the other.
All right. Hello, everyone. The simple fact that prostitution still exists to this day is beyond wild to me. This shows how little respect women have in this society. No matter the century or the social progress we've made for women's rights, men remain reluctant to challenge themselves or to challenge this archaic system they still benefit from. Sadly enough, the male demand for female prostitution is not decreasing one bit, which inevitably leads to a never-ending supply of women and girls, victims for this system to exist. This is the direct result of a culture based on conservative values, patriarchal values, where the sole purpose of women relies on servicing men. Deprived of autonomy, fundamental rights, or equal opportunities, there is not much of a choice left. Girls are still raised and treated as second-class citizens, which makes it difficult for us, to make us realize the structure is entrapping us. Pimps know how to spot a potential victim. She's preferably a girl from a broken household. Luckily for them, domestic violence is abundant under patriarchy, so that makes the supply of victims really easy for them. That makes their sexual grooming way easier to do without using force. The ideal prey for a pimp is a young victim of sexual abuse, and for that reason, that they were assaulted very young by a close relative. I think it's more than 80% of aggressors committing sexual violence against children is their father, more than 80%. And that their distress is too intense to handle, of course, they freeze and dissociate right away. Dissociating is what happens when you are in a situation of danger that you cannot fight back, nor physically escape. So you kind of escape mentally, waiting for the moment to pass. And this is something really important for pimps, because dissociating is what you have to do to make sure you can survive the violence of prostitution. When children are subjected to sexual abuse, they literally think they are going to die, so they freeze and they stay silent, so it doesn't make it worse. But it's not the victims. Oh no. From the outside, some might argue they are looking like they are consenting to this, staying there, doing nothing, saying nothing, or complying under the fear or threat of retaliation. But if someone's taking advantage of you for sexual gratification, it does not matter how you react. It is the issue at stake is the abuse and the abuser in the first place. And a distress like that simply does not disappear when the abuse ends. It will remain intact. It will manifest itself in various harmful ways later in life. By the time they hit puberty, these girls have learned to live with unspeakable trauma in silence because there is nobody to hear us. The anger they cannot express, they usually turn it inwards. It is the only thing left to do. Everything is meant to push girls and women to dissociate from themselves. They are conditioned to think their body is somehow broken. They have to fix every imaginary physical defect, all in the name of beauty, all in the name of being a girl. There are multiple media from our society and our culture that teach girls that beauty is painful and sex is painful too, so you have to accept it as fate and do it anyway. You know, beauty rituals encourage you to become someone else you are not. Cosmetic industry takes its aesthetics from the sex industry, which is why the objectification of women and the hypersexualization of teenagers in the media are so prevalent. This is where girls get their body issues from. The ads blatantly tell you to hate your natural female body because it is sinful to be a girl, just so you can buy their crappy products. All right. All of that just so you can look like their ideal type of woman, which is their favorite porn actress. They want you to turn yourself into caricatures of prostituted women without the perks of becoming one, but it is training you. This is how they sell this lie that prostitution is fun, chic, and liberating. Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, like they teach girls to draw a face on their face, glue some fake eyelashes on your eyelashes, wear clothes that barely cover anything. You must have big boobs, big bum, but God forbid if you have fat belly or thighs. You know what I mean? This is an extreme form of dissociation too. Always having to watch yourself in case someone notices your imperfect features. And teenagers literally have to live with this nightmare of impossible beauty standards. And there is no such pressure on boys to do the same. Because boys are not meant to dissociate as victims, but as dominant males. Even though we don't want to speak its name, prostitution is depicted everywhere. It is widely promoted to girls on porn websites, movies, music videos, novels, movies, social media, meeting apps for teenagers, TikTok, Instagram, teaching them that sexual violence is fun, sex work is work, it is easy money. But nothing about prostitution is easy. A past of sexual abuse combined with the culture conveying massively the image of women as sex objects makes it no wonder that more young girls fall into the trap of sexual violence, sexual exploitation. I mean, even I felt like a prostitute even before becoming one, always having those violent flashbacks, raised on porn, surrounded by male friends who watch porn. My family, like my dad and brother, watch porn. I thought at this moment, if this is so normal, then there must be a reason. You know, I am part of this generation who grew up with internet. If we want to know something, we Google it. When you hit puberty, you want to know more about sex education, you type sex, and all the results that come and that are presented to you is porn. A lot of kids watch porn and think prostitution is okay because we think that's what adults do. We don't understand the system, the exploitation, the manipulation, the violence behind it because we don't have the maturity yet. This is brainwashing girls into thinking sexual violence is okay. And this is brainwashing boys to be sexually violent and creepy with girls as something as a man should do. It is conditioning them to feel entitled to have access to girls that no means yes. You can insist, you can harass, mock her, insult her as whores who deserve it. You can buy her consent and compliance. How much of a free will is that when you were conditioned since childhood that women are meant to be used and discarded as products of conception? Because this is all about male sexuality, what they want to gain from you. But we women don't get pleasure, respect, orgasm, or intimacy in return. Sexual acts without intimacy makes no sense. If you need to dissociate yourself in order to survive the act, it is not sex, it is rape. Kids are literally watching the rape of women and think that's how the adults do it. And that's how they do it as adults later, if they're not doing right now as kids. There is a surge of sexual harassment and peeping issues with young boys asking girls to perform the same thing they see on porn. What the kids need is protection. They need protection from porn. And that is something European Parliament could do. As a survivor of incest, prostitution, and porn, I am terrified at the idea of other girls going down the same horrors as I have had experienced. So yeah, listen to survivors, support us, and protect the kids.
Thank you so much. And I know it's very moving to be here and to share all of these stories. And it's moving for me. I believe it's moving for everyone in the room. And it's incredibly brave of all of you to be able to be here and to just tell us all of this. So thank you so much. And yeah, what I wanted a little bit to go back on what you said about the beauty standards, because once again, everything regarding violence against women and girls is part of a continuum. And I feel like beauty standards associated to femininity are standards of an ideal of powerlessness. Basically, everything that is considered beautiful in a woman is something that makes us weak and unable to defend ourselves. So basically, as girls in this society, we are groomed to become victims. And men are groomed to become perpetrators of violence. And prostitution is a pillar of this. And I always say, and I said also this morning in the European Parliament, one of the arguments of our opponents is that if we are not in the sex trade, we are not legitimate to speak about it. What I answer to that is that as a woman, I am victim of prostitution, even though I'm not in the system. And of course, in all different level of the women who have experienced this violence firsthand. But as a woman, it is not possible for me to be equal to a man in a society where it's possible to buy women, to consider us as objects, put us in display in windows, deprive us of our human dignity or human rights, and basically sell us with fries in a menu for any man, any boy who wants it. So thank you for making all of these connections with sexual violence in childhood, with incest, with pornography. We will cover that a little bit later, more in depth, because there is a huge interconnection, of course, between pornography and prostitution. So thank you again for everything. And we have with us an amazing expert who has been gathering evidence and researching on this topic for, I think, 25 years or maybe more, I don't know. And so one of the arguments that are always used as well is why, if it's that horrible, why do women not exit prostitution, basically? Why are they staying here? And of course, this has to do with control that is exercised on them, but how does it work? Can you explain it to us, Melissa?
Sure. Thanks. It's an honor to be on this panel. I had all these lovely things to say, but there are enough things to respond to that I would like to do that instead. Let me just briefly say that women don't exit prostitution because they don't have alternatives in housing. And when pimps provide housing instead of governments, what do you think someone's going to do when it's cold and they don't have a roof over their head or food the next meal? So Women don't exit prostitution for exactly the same reason that battered women don't leave battering relationships. There's no difference. They're afraid. Pimps are going to hunt them down and harm them. They don't have community support that's adequate. They don't have alternative housing. The exact same question has been asked for years in my country. You know, what's the matter with her? She's not leaving that SOB violent guy, as if it's put on her and she's the one to blame for his abuse. It's astonishing when you really think of the logic or the insanity of that argument. So much has been said here. I just want to respond to a few things. First, about poverty and the class issues in prostitution. In the 90s, in about 96, I was in Lusaka. And Lusaka, in its post-colonial, devastated, politically fragmented place in the world, then and now, the British, after they finished destroying the resources of the country and stopping all agricultural production, left. And there was chaos. And in the chaos, a lot of people were extremely poor. What I saw in Lusaka was this. Poor men were selling pencils and washing car windshields. As you drove by, they had those little squeegee things. Give me a few kwacha. You know, in those days, it took a suitcase of kwacha to pay for one meal. So the men were selling pencils and washing car windshields. The women were prostituting. That is not just poverty. That's poverty and sexism. We cannot talk about prostitution without talking about poverty and sexism and racism, because every advertisement for every woman in prostitution is racialized. Prostitution is a racialized hate crime for everyone of every color, even including white people. We're racialized too. We're sold as ex-blonde bimbos. Believe me, I know about that growing up in the US. So it is a very, very racist occupation, and women of many different colors are racialized in the sex trade. I also want to talk about sexual abuse. I once heard a US pimp say, without a smile on his face, I just pick up where her dad left off. He's already had her trained. And as horrible as that statement is, I believe there's a huge amount of truth to it. You know, when a child has been chronically sexually abused, and we know from research that women in prostitution tend not to have been abused by just sexually abused by one or two perps, but by a community, because they're targeted in their community as vulnerable children. And that is definitely where it starts. And the training, the dissociative training is absolutely right on. And it's not just psychological dissociation or chemical dissociation in the case of drugs and alcohol. It's somatic dissociation, yes, which is what you were talking about. Whole parts of the body are anesthetized because in an attempt to protect the self, that's why it happens. Dissociation is really good when you have no power and your life is being threatened, as is the case in incest and prostitution. So dissociation is good and bad. The problem with it is that one is immobilized and can't act to defend oneself, because that's the freezing in dissociation prevents self-defense and fury and rage and counterattack if necessary. It's not safe to do that. So I also want to mention something about class privilege, because it's so true. I'm middle class. It took me so many years to understand the very, very simple things about prostitution, which is at its core. After many years, I was interviewing someone in a brothel in South Africa, and this was a man, said to me, "You're just asking about physical abuse, aren't you? You're asking about rapes and this and that." I said, "Yeah, isn't that important?" He said, "You're missing the verbal abuse." He said, we heal from the rapes and the beatings and the broken this and that. But the words that human beings are called during acts of intrusion of the most intimate parts of the body, those words are in the psyche, in a person's being. Just the way the words, any of us who were not in prostitution, if we were called names as a child, guess what? That still rattles around 50 years later in our brains. So one of the things I learned is that anyone who really understands the experience of humiliation can understand what prostitution is, because I think that is one of the elements at the core of it. Once a person is in it, it's an experience of humiliation, a sexual humiliation, but many other kinds of humiliation that are very harmful. I've also never understood, I don't know why, but I don't understand why women who have not been in prostitution cannot understand the economic fear of homelessness and poverty. It's always been crystal clear to me that I was this far away from turning a trick. I wouldn't have called it that, but I would have done it. And I would frankly still do it in a minute if my child or grandchildren's lives depended on my getting a hold of unattainable money. That's not it's such a simple fact. As long as that is women's last ditch option in the world, and I hope some future generations that will never be an option for women, prostitution or sexual abuse or rape. But as long as it's there, of course women do that when they don't have other forms of equality in their lives. About beauty standards. Let me just say something about that. Have you seen the cover of the US magazine, Sports Illustrated?
Mhm.
As an 80-year-old, I'm here to tell you, Martha Stewart was 81 years old and on the cover of Sports Illustrated with Lord knows how many tens of thousands of dollars of plastic surgery, a lifestyle beyond that of anyone in this room. She probably had her own cook, her own garden in the backyard, her own massages every other day. Wouldn't that be nice? Cooks and massages and beauty creams. But for an old woman to be still under those kind of standards, let me tell you, there's just a special pain to it. It's particularly horrific to young women. I absolutely agree. But it doesn't quit. It doesn't quit. You know, at 65, a number of years ago, I was doing a research interview with sex buyers, and a pimp came in because he was low on money that day and wanted to be interviewed. And of course, he was a John as well as a pimp. And in the course of the interview, you know, I had introduced myself as a researcher, you know, blah, 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 thinking that would protect me. No. I'm interviewing a guy who's in sex buyer mode. You know, these interviews that we did with sex buyers kind of got them activated a little bit. Every single interviewer, including me at age 65, was physically sexually harassed. Not on the shoulder. This guy patted me on the thigh and said, I have a crib up in the north side of Chicago. We could always use some older white ladies. So he was trying to pimp me out in a research interview. Who was I to him? You know what I was. A body part. And it was an experience that, as you can tell, I won't forget for a long time, of what it's like to be completely turned into a piece of meat. And he enjoyed every minute of it because he saw my discomfort. Say, I was in Rachel, I was in research mode. So I'm talking to these guys, and when they do stuff like that, I'm like, you motherfucker, I'm taking notes on this, and I'm going to talk about it for the next 20 years. And I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
But I interviewed another guy who said, well, let me explain prostitution to you, you dumb idiot. He said, it's like renting an organ for 10 minutes. Now, what I said to that guy was, thank you so much, because I do thank him. He told me the truth. And that's been the title of an article and I've been using that one too. So sometimes we hear the truth from pimps and johns. I guess the one other thing, can I say one other thing? Is there time? Is about disinformation. I think what we're faced with today is so many lies. The people, the political movement to promote prostitution is not a sex worker rights movement. It's a pimp rights movement. Mm-hmm. Of course, we know it's not sex for the women in prostitution. It's not work for anybody. But more than that, it's a pimp movement. Let's call it that. You know, that half of the people who are sex worker advocates talking to politicians, members of the European Parliament, half of these people are people that are actually currently functioning as pimps. When we say we want to listen to survivors, I guess what I would add to that is we want to listen to exited survivors that are no longer under pimp control. Mm-hmm. Because the voices we hear again and again, who have 5 websites, who have a PR campaign, these people are being paid for by some of the biggest money in the world today, the Gates Foundation, the Soros Foundation, or the Ford Foundation, to represent their interest in keeping the sex trade going. So, Alejandro Gil, yes. But there are 12 others. If anybody, our signs are slowly, they're getting tired. We have to prop them up. But if anybody wants the names of 12 people, including Alejandro Gil, who is a sex worker advocate representing the United Nations and the World Health Organization, one of their poster girls, she was convicted of trafficking in Mexico City. And so this is the kind of person that is brought in to the front to speak for all women and all prostituted women. We just have to call them out. We have to be rude and we have to be loud. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. And I really want to go back on this anecdote about renting an organ for 10 minutes. Because I think what that person was also failing to acknowledge or understand is that, of course, this organ is not an organ, it's a person. And usually, often when we speak about prostitution, we speak about selling bodies, renting bodies, renting vaginas, or for instance, in surrogacy, renting uteruses. But what is very important message to pass as well, in my opinion, is that our bodies are us.
Yeah.
We are our bodies, and the patriarchal society, we all experience a collective dissociation because of the imagery, sexualization, objectification, morcellement, I don't know how to say that in English, but the fact that our bodies are always represented in pieces. Fragmentation. We have this relationship to our own bodies, kind of dissociation, yes, the distanciation from it. And recognizing that we are our bodies, and what is done to our bodies is done to us, and it has an impact on our psyche, like you were saying, psychotraumatology, consequences of violence that was done to our bodies, sexual violence, physical violence, etc. They last forever, and we build ourselves around this. And recognizing it is, in my opinion, a first step to healing, to a healing process. So thank you so much. And we have, last but not least, an amazing speaker who is going to cover also a very important topic, because of course we spoke about race and colonialism, which is also at the basis of the system of prostitution. It's also very linked with human trafficking. 65% of human trafficking in Europe is for the purpose of sexual exploitation. 85% of the victims are women and girls, once again. And blessing yourself, you are a survivor of trafficking for sexual exploitation. And I think you want to share your experience with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Speak well into the
Okay, please. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, I'm really, really very happy to be here and to talk about my experience as a survivor of sex trafficking. It happens 10 years ago when I was trafficked from my country, Nigeria, to Spain, and after 3 days, to Italy. You know, when we are talking about human trafficking, sex trafficking, and we want to disassociate it from prostitution, that is where we are wrong and biased. Because if the sex industry, prostitution, is not flourishing, the traffickers, they won't even think of recruiting girls from disadvantaged home background countries into the markets of prostitution. Then when we are talking about prostitution, we should not disassociate it from sex trafficking. Because if victims and survivors of sex trafficking and those in prostitution can be honest to themselves to speak without any form of coercion, to speak the reality, then we all understand that majority of the women in prostitution are victims of sex trafficking.
Because when we look at the definition of human trafficking, then we should not forget that when it was defined by the UN, the Palermo Protocol, there is what they call transportation, movement, and most victims of sex trafficking, most women in prostitution are moved from their countries that are mostly disadvantaged, developing, low economic country to dominant economic country. And when we look at that definition, we can see that there is coercion. We can see that there is housing, accommodation, and we see that most women in prostitution are accommodated. Just like what Melissa spoke about, housing. The reason why most women are still there because of housing, because they think, I don't know this country. How do I start? Where should I go? Who will accommodate me? How can I put the bill? Who will rent me a house, an apartment, or a single room? And how can they go about it? Then when they think about all these questions, then they conclude in just one, let me remember. Then, when we look at the definition of human trafficking, then we cannot disassociate it from this term, prostitution, because we just have to be used to these terminologies and critically examine it and its definition. When somebody tells me you are a victim of sex trafficking, don't talk about prostitution. Oh, do you know what you're talking about? I was trafficked because prostitution exists, because it is the oldest profession in the world. Because the pimps, the traffickers make huge sum of money annually from the business. Then what are we talking about? As a migrant woman, exiting prostitution, running away, escaping from your trafficker, it's not easy. Just like what Luba said, these people are trafficked into countries that they can't even speak the language. They don't even know their rights because the traffickers, the pimps are so smart, organized. They have to exploit on your vulnerability. They know that you don't know the rights. They know that you don't know the law. They know that you can speak the language. And they have to keep you within their premises. They have to introduce to you that community full of exploitation. And you have to be groomed there. You have to develop your psychology there. You have to be there, seeing yourself not as a victim, because many victims do not even understand that they are really victims of trafficking. Because being in that psyche, you are groomed into believing that without the trafficker, your life and that of your family members would have been miserable forever. You are groomed psychologically to believe that this trafficker is your savior and that of your entire family. You are made to believe that they are the only one that you can attach to. You are made to believe, to see any other person outside down their psyche, outside down their community as enemy, as an exploiter, as somebody that just wants to take you away and make you to die in poverty. Because without them, you are made to believe that you would have died in poverty. Without them, you would have not been making your hair, fixing human hair. Without them, you would have not been getting cream to beautify your skin. Without them, you would have not been wearing beautiful clothes. Without them, you would have not even have Instagram, where you can showcase your half-naked body. You are groomed not to see us outside the box. You are there within the, you are just there. That is where you belong. And made to be living constantly in fears. Fear of the unknown. What will happen if I exit? What will happen if I escape? In fact, in the Nigerian community, being a religious society, the victims pray for their trafficking for protection, so that they cannot be arrested, because what if they are arrested? What will happen to us? What if they die? What will happen to us? Then they have to constantly pray for the traffic. This is society world there. And somebody is telling me to disassociate prostitution from sex trafficking. Because I have lived it. I am a victim. I'm not a survivor. I mean, to shout this way, meaning that it has a very strong, painful impact on me, psychologically, and on my soul. Because when you talk about trauma, when you talk about suffering, immediately looks the same. It's not a place where I wish my enemy. Being a computer science graduate, when I exited, when I reported them to police, when I was taken to a center, completely, I lost everything. I lost everything. That I can't even see the perfection of my work. I can't even, you are humiliated. You are made, you are psychologically conditioned to humiliate yourself automatically, unconsciously. You are made not to believe yourself. In just few days that I stay on the streets, I can no longer believe my efficacy. I can no longer see myself as a computer science graduate. I have to escape using the computer. I have to escape repairing the computer. I have to just think of going into another line, tailoring line. In few days that I spent in the streets, I was totally wiped of my personality. It's a psychological weapon on victims because it destroyed me, truncates me, making me to restart all over. Just few days. What about those that have been there? If it has happened to you and you are able to get out, you will keep shouting. I don't think you will be able to keep quiet. You will keep shouting. You will keep saying no. You will keep saying dignity and the dignity of others and those that are potentials, that would be potential victims. This is the reason why we must not keep quiet. This is the reason why we must keep fighting for this quality model. For the hope of our hope of other people, and hope for the whole society.
Thank you so much, Blessing. Thank you, everyone. This very heavy topic, obviously, and I think it's so important to be able to have you gathered and to listen to you. We have also over 80 people online listening to you. So thank you for everything. And now we have about 15 minutes to take some questions. I don't know if there are some questions in the audience. I will circulate the mic. And also, Adriana, maybe if you can take some questions from the chat, or Anna. If you're following online and you want to have a question, to ask a question, you can write it down in the chat. Any question?
Should we ask it or the only question that we have in the chat is what about men in prostitution?
Oh,
Okay, according to different estimations, there are between 10 and 5% of men and children, adolescents, male adolescents in prostitution. We as survivors, as a researcher and as abolitionists, we don't believe that anyone's body should be for sale. So we totally oppose commercializing, sexually abusing for profit body of anyone. And of course, we would love to cooperate with any male organization or to amplify voices of any male survivors of prostitution. No one's body should be for sale.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add to that answer. Yes, indeed, there are a very small percentage of men in prostitution as compared to women. To the person who asked that question, I would invite them to ask themselves another. And the question is, who's buying them? Who's buying the men in prostitution? Who's using their bodies for sex? But it's not women.
One other response to that. I use the generic word women to refer to humankind.
yes.
Because for 10, 15,000 years, it's been referred to as mankind and humankind. So when I talk about women in prostitution, yes, there's some men included also.
Thank you. Do we have any other question from the audience? I understand that it's very heavy and everyone has to take some air as well. So I want to thank again all of the speakers, all of the panelists. I honestly have endless love and admiration for women, and an event like this just moves me so much. It's even hard to speak. So thank you again. You can applaud yourself. We can all applaud ourselves. Thank you for everyone, also all of the organizations who are involved in supporting this event, European Network of Migrant Women, Kappa International, Oser le Féminisme, SIAMS, Iroko, and many more. And thank you, Space International, of course. And thank you to all of the survivors who are here and who did not take the floor because we don't have endless time, but you came and you're here with us and you're also sharing your stories. And so thank you so much. We have next panel, we'll have a break now, about 20 minutes. You can grab water, coffee, and then come back. We have another panel. It's on other forms of commodification of women and girls and how it's linked with prostitution. So we will speak about surrogacy, we will speak about pornography as well. We also have a statement from Linia Munoz, who is a member of the European Parliament and who wanted to support our event or action. And she made a very strong statement that we will show you after the break. Thank you so much, everyone.
Great.
Yes, I know. Sorry.
Yeah, I also have the urge to apologize, but I won't.
I know. I need to
For the people who are on Zoom, thank you for being with us until now. We're going to take a 20-minute break, and you're welcome to come back after. Thank you so much.
Yes, I really don't know, but it's okay. Yes, yes.
Hello, for the people who are watching online, we're sorry, but we missed a couple questions because there's a delay between what we're seeing. We'll make sure to address some of the questions that you asked here. And thank you for your patience.
It's not a man.
For the people who are online, could you please tell me if you see the screen that is being shared? Thank you. You confirm that you see an MEP, Member of Parliament. Thank you.
So, panel on prostitution, women are not for sale, and the intersecting discriminations at work in prostitution. Please see if there's a lot of space in front. We are going to start with a word from Member of European Parliament, Lina Galvez Munoz, who is an MEP from the Socialist and Democrat Party, a strong abolitionist voice and supporter, and she left us with a message.
Sorry, technical details. We want to turn off the light, but it doesn't seem possible. Change the light. Microphone. Let's just put microphone here. This is the maximum. This is the maximum.
Okay.
Sorry.
Can I? Be careful. C'est pas un truc comme ça, là?
Anybody?
So let me start by introducing you with our great panelists today. We have first Alissa Arabar, advocacy lead at European Network of Migrant Women. We have Anna Luana Stoicea Duran, co-president of the Coalition International for the Abolition of Surrogate Motherhood, followed by Ezoe Agatis, who is the founder and director of Iroko, a grassroots organization supporting women in prostitution in Italy. We have also Mireia Crespo, who is the director of Isala, a grassroots organization supporting women in prostitution in Brussels. And we have Julia Doroga from Legal Life Ukraine.
All legal life Ukrainian NGO.
Okay.
No.
Great. So we have heard all day, and it's also our daily work on analyzing prostitution as a commodification of women's bodies. Very recently, some cases, for example, in France on pornography have emerged, highlighting the abuse, the rape culture in which porn is also entrenched in, and the way that it also preys on the same vulnerabilities as the prostitution system, that it targets the same women, and that it perpetuates the same sexist, misogynistic views of women in our societies. So I am happy to leave the floor to Alissa Arabar, who can maybe address pornography and the links with prostitution a little more. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. So Adriana, do you think you can show, I made a little presentation. Just to give you some context, on top of my work as advocacy and legal lead of the European Network of Migrant Women, I am co-president and spokeswoman for an organization in France named Oser le Féminisme. It's an organization of general interest that is awareness raising and advocacy organization. And one of our latest very important projects, we are civil parties in 2 legal cases against the pornography industry in France. And we are really trying to tackle this industry in many, many ways that I will explain. And yeah, this is a little bit the basis of my presentation. You can go yes to the first. So pornography, of course, what I'm going to highlight here is the link and the relationship and the interconnection between pornography and prostitution. Because they are numerous, and this is the topic that we're talking about today. And from the very beginning, from the etymology of the word pornography, it comes from porne, which refers to a prostitute, but not every prostitute, a particularly low class of prostitute that are slaves, sex slaves, in the ancient Greece, and graphy, which is, as we all know, the image. So basically, from the origin, pornography refers to the imagery related to prostitution, and especially this hierarchy created between different categories of women.
Sorry.
No problem. So yeah, that's always been pornography. That's something we hear a lot. Why are you fighting against pornography? That's always been pornography. A little bit of the same we hear about prostitution, right? But the thing is, there's not always been a pornography industry. In the 50s, there was the first edition of Playboy that was issued, and it was the first time that pornography was put in the mainstream neoliberal capitalist system that we know now. And of course, it started to generate profit, and with profit comes the escalation of the exploitation of women. So when Penthouse was issued, the idea was to concurrence Playboy. And so there was this competition between what was called softcore and hardcore. And the effect that this had is to multiply the violence, humiliation, debasing of women in pornography to sell more and more and more magazines. So then in the 2000s, Gail Dines, who is a great feminist expert about pornography, she refers to the phenomenon as the AAA, affordable, accessible, anonymous. This is what happened to pornography in the 2000s because of the websites, pornography websites. Since it became affordable, accessible everywhere, anytime, and also anonymous, because you don't have to go and buy a magazine or to buy or rent a DVD. You can go online in your room, no one knows. So this is what made the demand for pornography absolutely explode. And one fun fact, let's say, is that MindGeek, which is today the company based in Canada that owns most of the pornography website, the biggest platforms such as Pornhub, it was called initially Manwin, which is literally what happens in pornography. So pornography today, it is over 1/4 of the internet traffic worldwide. So it's completely omnipresent, it's everywhere. But at the same time, it's quite taboo. When we speak about sexuality education, when we speak about violence against women, when we speak about sexual violence, we don't often make the connection in pornography, especially in the mainstream media, etc. In our feminist sectors, of course, we do, but not in the rest of society, which is a shame. And through the work that we conducted with Oser le Féminisme, with these 2 civil cases that are not now launched against Jackie and Michel platform and also Pascal Opé, we have also done a lot of advocacy meetings, mobilizing since 2020. 2020, we have mobilized with French senators, and especially Laurence Rossignol and Laurence Cohen, who conducted the writing of a report. And the report was issued in last September, and it's a very good report, really highlighting the violence of pornography, the interconnection with prostitution, and the fact that it's not possible to regulate pornography, and that basically almost the totality of the content on pornography platform is violence against women. So this is a very good tool that we're now using to promote these messages also abroad. More recently, there is a report from the UK Parliament with the same conclusions that was published as well. And currently, inquiry is ongoing by the Swedish government on the same topic. So we will see about the results. So yeah, this report states, among other things, that 90% of the video on pornographic platform are violent, and that women respond to violence by pleasure in this video. This is very important for me when it comes to pornography, because pornography is one of the manifestations of violence against women, but it's also the school and the legitimation of violence against women, right? So when we have young children, teenagers, and adults exposed every day to pornographic content where women respond to violence, humiliation, debasement, etc. with pleasure, the message that it sends is that women we like to be heard, and there is a confusion between sexuality and violence. So young girls watching pornography, they are under the impression that this is what is expected of them in sexuality, and that it is normal behavior to have your hair pulled, to be beaten, or to have gangbang sex, or all of these practices that are very mainstream today on pornographic websites. Also, if we speak about pornography, we cannot not speak about pedocriminality. Pedopornographic content online is huge. Today, there is a phenomenon of digitalization of prostitution and sexual violence. Internet is used to sexually exploit young girls and young boys as well from all around the world. There is no border anymore to be able to sexually violate a child. And what is interesting to know is that 62% of the pedopornographic content is hosted in Europe. So there is a very big responsibility of all European countries in this phenomenon. I wrote tag words because something also very important in pornography, which links it to prostitution as well, is the categorization of women that we can find in pornography. This categorization, most often, it is based on race, ethnic origin. So according, for instance, if you're Black, if you're Arab, if you're Asian, you're going to have different racist stereotypes associated to you. And this is going to feed the level of violence and humiliation that you're going to face in the videos, right? So for instance, there is a lot of Islamophobia in France. One of the main research words in pornographic websites in France is beurette, which is a racist slur to refer to Arab women. And so there are a lot of videos of veiled women being raped, being peed on, their veil being taken away. And it also finds its roots in colonization because it reminds us of the sexualization of women in the colonized countries and the brothel that was created for the colonizers, etc. So it's all related to this. And this creation basically of a hierarchy once again. So you have the racialized women that are less than nothing, and then the white women that are nothing, and then the black men that are also very sexualized in pornography, and you have the white men, which are the man-win, once again, they are the dominant figure that is always put in a very strong light. With these tag words, there are also a lot of referral to pedocriminality and incest. We can find tag words such as teen, schoolgirl, daddy, stepdaughter, etc. And so this is also problematic. And one of the things we're trying to advocate for in France is for all of these categories in pornographic websites to be forbidden because it's apology of pedocriminality. It is forbidden. There is a délit, an infraction in French law. I think it must exist in most legal systems that it's forbidden to incite someone to commit a crime. This is incitation to commit pedocriminality. When you look at videos where there are dads raping their little girls, etc., and it's all fun and game, and it's available online for anyone to see and to masturbate on, this is incitation to commit a crime. This should not be existing. You can go to the next one. So yeah, that's what we did. It started in 2020, like I was saying. There was an investigation published by, no, it's something else, sorry. This is the investigation going on in the US, because there is also a trial against Pornhub. And in 2020, when the New York Times published the fact that there are a lot of underage victims of rape, their videos are on Pornhub. As a reaction, MasterCard and Visa decided to not allow people to pay on Pornhub. And so Pornhub decided to delete all of the content that was not verified. And this amounted to millions of videos being deleted, just showing how much there is no control whatsoever on the content of these websites. Can go to the next. So pornography, it's violation of EU law. So this is also something we're trying to promote, is that to fight against the pornography industry, we do not even need a new legal framework, because what is on pornography website is already forbidden. It is crimes, it is film crimes and apology of crimes. So for instance, there are a lot of videos of torture, inhuman and degrading treatment, slavery and servitude. The right to private life is completely violated, since these women, they have their videos online and they cannot, there is no way to take them off the internet. Even in the cases that are going on now in France, so it's an ongoing criminal investigation where there are 20 men that are in preventive detention. The videos of the victims of these ongoing trials, we are not able to take them off the internet. And we have 50 lawyers with us working on this. We are going to meetings with the different authorities that are supposed to regulate the content on the internet. There is no way. When you delete it from one website, it pops up somewhere else. Even Google, we're trying to contact Google because on Google Image, there are all of the pictures of the women, and they live in fear that their family, their co-workers, etc., will see these images. And it's for them a social death, because they cannot walk down the streets without someone coming to insult them or to sexually assault them because they saw the videos. Trafficking. This is another very important thing, because the recruiting methods of the pornography industry are exactly the same than in prostitution. So we spoke earlier about all of the vulnerability and the intersection being a young girl, being in poverty, being racialized, being migrant, etc. All of these vulnerability factors, of course, apply to pornography as well. The pimps, pornography pimps, they are targeting women and girls the same way prostitution pimps are targeting them. They are then raping them. And it's the first rape called viol d'abattage. Don't know how to say that in English, but this first rape is meant to traumatize the victims and then to have them stay in this system and not exit. And very often women in pornography then go in prostitution or the other way around. Yeah, you can go to the next. Yeah, so this is what we did in France. It started in September 2020. So there was a guy, a journalist, French journalist, Robin Angelou. He went undercover in the pornography industry, and then he wrote a book about the violence that he saw. So we took this book and we translated it in legal offenses, and we wrote a letter to the Paris prosecutor, and we said, okay, this is rape, torture, acts of barbarism, fraudulent abuse of ignorance, and pimping. So there needs to be an investigation. And the Paris prosecutor did launch an investigation. And it had a lot of media coverage because Jackie et Michel in France is a huge platform, and it's also not just the pornography website. They have shops, they have merchandising, they have TV channels, etc. So it was a little bit of a boom when this was issued. And we launched a call for testimonies because we knew there were more victims. And we received a lot of messages, and we created a support network for the victims who are not now also either plaintiff or civil party in the trial. We're providing them with legal support, monetary support to come to Paris for the audiences, to go to the court, psychological support as well, social support. We hired a social worker to support them on a case-to-case basis. We organized a weekend for them to meet and for them to have freedom of speech, to express what they went through, and also to build their feminist consciousness, to try and put words on what they went through and understand that it's not their fault, because of course, a lot of them are blaming themselves, and they are not even sure that the people, the men who were raping them knew what they were doing. And what we're also trying to show, not tell them what they went through, but explain from a structural perspective, these men, they know what they are doing because they targeted you because of this and that and that. And so you can go to the next. Last night, I stayed up until 3 a.m. to put you subtitle on this video because for me, it's absolutely important to show it. This woman is one of the victims we are giving support to. And she made this video a while ago, and I'm showing it every time I speak about pornography in a panel, because for her, it's extremely important for her voice to be heard. She feels like she's taking back her power by just sharing her story. And I think it's very important to understand how she was groomed into pornography, and she explains it very well. So we can listen to her now.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, to give some context, there is a man voice asking her questions. It is her husband. She asked him to ask the question because she couldn't do it alone. So I'm just saying because it's a man voice and sometimes it can sound weird and a little bit aggressive, but it was her request. It's in French anyway, so I think you should read the subtitle.
Bravo.
So yeah, thank you for her. If you have messages for her as well, I always message her after I show the video. So if you have something that you want to tell her, I can forward. She's just one of the many brave women who are now taking a stand against the pornography industry in France. They all went through a similar experience of this man who was pretending to be a woman online to target young girls and to groom them into pornography. And then when you're sequestrated in a house for 48 hours and tortured and beaten and filmed, and these videos are out there forever. So it's 48 hours who just destroys your entire life. So this is what pornography is. And this content on pornography websites, if it was anywhere else, it would be forbidden. But because it's on pornography website, it is called art. It is called freedom of expression. It is called sexuality. But it's none of that. It's only violence against women. So yeah, these are all the links with prostitution and trafficking. Like I said, the targeting of vulnerable victims, grooming through manipulation, also the use of lover boy technique, because a lot of boyfriends are also pushing for their girlfriends to have sex on camera, etc. Coercion and intimidation, human trafficking. So there is a very important case called Zona Diva, where 2,000 women from different countries in South America were trafficked under the false pretenses of advertisement for a modeling agency. So they thought that they were going for a modeling job, but they were sequestrated for weeks and they were raped on camera, and they were threatened that if they left, they will take someone else from their family, or they will send the picture and the videos to their family. Many were killed. And that's also a reality, that the videos that are on pornographic websites and to which men are masturbating, many of these women and many of these girls are actually dead now because they were killed after being raped. So yeah, next slide.
Sorry.
So yeah, this corresponds to the pimp methods according to the Palermo Protocol. And yeah, now there are a lot of ways in which pornography is a continuum, right? So of course there is this absurd, huge violence faced by the women that are on the videos, and also women and girls from the global south, because it's very common, for instance, in India, in Nigeria, etc., for girls to be raped, and then the videos are sold on WhatsApp and they end up in Pornhub. But also, this is very pervasive because this violence of pornography, it impacts all areas of society. And like I was saying previously for prostitution, it is not possible for women and men to be equal in a society that exists, and where there is this school and legitimation of the humiliation of women. And this is creating new forms of violence, such as what is commonly referred to as revenge porn, which is image-based sexual abuse, where the intimate pictures or videos of a woman or a girl are shared without her consent. Also the use of deepfake technology, which is this new technology where you can put the face of a woman on a body of anyone and you can pretend that she's having sex, etc. So you can humiliate a woman even though you haven't actually filmed her while she was having sex or being raped. Camming and OnlyFans, which is also, once again, one of the doorway into prostitution, right? So a lot of young girls, very young girls, they go on TikTok or Instagram, and then there are all of these predators asking them, okay, if you do this, if you take off your shirt, I give you more likes, etc. And at some point, okay, you should go to OnlyFans now and create your community on OnlyFans. And then it creates this whole sex work narrative where very young women have been groomed for such a young age, and now they say, no, but I'm on OnlyFans because I chose it, it's my freedom, etc. But the truth is the website takes most of the money that they earn, and they are at risk of a lot of violence and then falling into the system of prostitution that we described it in the panel before. Rape on command is what I was referring to. So it's basically when, I don't know, a French guy orders a rape for a little boy in the Philippines, and it sends money to the Philippines, and the little boy is raped on camera, and he's just watching. And this is happening more and more as well. So yeah, there is a pandemic of sexual violence worldwide, and pornography is one of the very main cause of it, and it's completely ignored by legal systems, and it's time for it to change. So that's why we call the European Parliament to take a stand for Europe free from prostitution and pornography and every form of sexual exploitation.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Alisa, for this horrifying presentation on porn. It's a very heavy subject, and I think you touched perfectly on the way that porn glorifies the rape, the dehumanization, and the commodification of women and girls. And when we speak about the commodification of women and girls, we cannot ignore another form of sexual and economic exploitation, which is surrogacy, which is also founded and based on the same exploitative conditions and inequalities that happens in prostitution, namely the fact that we allow for a separate class of women to be surrogates, to have their bodies and to have their beings being sexually exploited for the gratifications of others. So, Anna, could you maybe address this issue a bit more and speak about the links between surrogacy, prostitution, and why it is an issue of bodily integrity? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I will try to explain. I would like first to thank the organizers of this event for inviting the International Coalition for the Abolition of Surrogate Motherhood, which I represent, to speak at this event, as we share a common analysis of women's emancipation and autonomy. Indeed, we consider that to make vagina and uterus the means by which women in the 21st century achieve their emancipation would be a regression in terms of the recognition of the equal dignity of all persons. Equality between women and men requires the respect of common rules which protect against alienation and exploitation of people and their bodies. I am here in my capacity of one of the 3 co-chairwomen of the ICAS, but as a person, if I am fighting surrogacy today, is because first, I understood the danger of neoliberal policies promoting prostitution. Let me make a confession, especially here and in front of survivors. I have never been a prostitute, nor have I ever tried to. And yet, on several occasions, I have been approached by men offering me money or gifts to have sex with them. Why? I was a young woman, Romanian, in Romania at that time, and therefore, for those Western gentlemen, I was likely to be a prostitute. One of them entered my student room without even knocking. He was looking for a girl, speaking his language. He wanted a girl like this in the middle of the afternoon. Another one, after a professional interview, tried to slip some money into my cleavage, asking me to come later for another interview. And the situation would be numerous. So in my private life, in my student life, in my professional life, I have been explicitly asked to prostitute myself. Even so, the context in which I met those men had nothing to do with sex. If they did so with me and with other women and girls, it was because they felt it was their right to ask for. The right to buy the bodies of young women. Their sense of impunity matched the discomfort I felt. For them, I was a young Romanian woman, therefore a prostitute, because that was the way they wanted me to be. And the experience was repeated when I arrived in France, where I lived for many years now. Quote, "You girls from the East, all whores," was addressed to me directly several times. Because clients look at the reality that surrounds them and designate women through the uses they want to make of them. The market adapts to satisfy the clients. At the beginning of the 90s, Western men came to Eastern European countries to seek sexual relations in which young women had no protection, neither by the society, nor by the state, nor by their entourage. But very quickly, pimping networks were formed, which provided clients with women in their own countries. And years ago, in Paris, in a playground, another child insulted one of my children by telling him which Parisian boulevard was home to Romanian prostitutes. I was the mother of the child who was insulted. We see today the same double movement in the constitution of the surrogacy market. On the one hand, clients are traveling to countries where women are vulnerable enough to consider that surrogacy motherhood may represent a solution to improve their material situation. On the other hand, service providers, intermediaries, agencies, clinics, are offering home-based services. For instance, Ukrainian clinics, several Ukrainian clinics have been offering for some years now to bring the pregnant woman to give birth in the country and city chosen by the clients: Prague, Brussels, Montreal, others. All that clients have to do is to send their sperm by mail, buy the eggs on the internet, choose a surrogate on a catalog by internet, and then also choose the city for the delivery of the child. Just to remember, surrogacy is a social practice, not a medical intervention, a social practice of recruiting a woman, whether for remuneration or not, mostly for remuneration, to bear one or more children, whether or not conceived with her own eggs, for the purpose of handing them over to a person or persons who wish to be assigned as parents of those children. Whether in prostitution or in surrogacy, women are exploited both in their country of origin and in other countries, where they are displaced in order to be used. Several aspects are common to both practices, which we have identified in the analysis of the situations we observe, and also in more depth in the survey we conducted with the European Network of Migrant Women on migration and surrogacy. First of all, the same arguments are used by those who support and promote prostitution and surrogacy. The argument, it already exists. It is in the Bible. Surrogacy is in the Bible. So it is inevitable. It can be banned. So it is better to regulate. Prostitution, the same argument. The patriarchal inversion of the victim position. Clients are people in need, while prostitutes and surrogates choose to do so because they are nice, altruistic, generous women and men. The free choice and the consent arguments are also very often promoted. They know what they are doing, so let them free to do it. Who are you as a feminist to stop women to be nice with clients? These arguments show that those who support these practices are always on the side of the client, because it is always from their perspective as consumers that the practice is presented. As feminists, we know that women's rights can only be defended from a woman-centered perspective, as it is about her body, her health, her life. Prostitution, surrogacy, pornography, all that concerns the commodification and the dehumanization of women. The second point they have in common is that they are fueled by the inequalities suffered by women. They are also practices that constitute violence against women. We already saw it for prostitution, for pornography, but it is also the case in surrogacy. If for the prostitution, you are the experts. As for concern for surrogacy, we have shown several times that the violence is explicit in the wording, in the content of the contracts. In the American contracts, it is clearly said that the woman is not paid, but she is compensated or reimbursed. And she is not reimbursed for the child. She is not reimbursed for the filiation link, for renouncing to the filiation. But it is clearly stated in the contract, she is reimbursed for the pain and suffering endured voluntarily and knowingly. Another proof of the intrinsic violence is that those who denounce and fight against receive violence from the clients themselves. Verbal violence, even written and signed by men who consider themselves all-powerful. Some of them are senior civil servants or political advisors, including in the sphere of the European Parliament. Clients are everywhere. Or names from the show business, whose appetite for violence against women is well known. Very, very recently, our Colombian comrades from the association Corporación Feminista Mujer Denuncia y Muévete were attacked the night before because they fight prostitution and surrogacy in a very dangerous region in Colombia. It is not the first time they were attacked. The third common point is that in prostitution, as in surrogacy, women are exploited for the benefit of a market whose main clients are men. While in prostitution, men and trans people are also victims, in surrogacy, the raw material is the female mother. On the other hand, the clients are, for the most part, men. The clients of surrogacy are, in big majority, men, in couple with a woman, alone, in couple with a man, or even in a trouble. A Californian judge just asked for the recognition of a birth certificate on which there were 3 men, the trouble, who commissioned the child. No woman was mentioned. The health and the life of at least 2 women was at risk, the one who sold her eggs and the one who was the surrogate. No woman is mentioned. Women do not exist in order to satisfy men demand. And when you look at the clinic and agency owners who made a fortune over the past 30 years, the majority are men. Unlike prostitution, surrogacy is almost exclusively about mothers. It is therefore not only about the woman who consent out of free choice and altruism, but also about her children. And it is also about the child she brings into the world, which adults can dispose of as they wish. The force of the market that uses women for their reproductive capacities is immediately perceptible in the arguments of those who wanted to legislate in order to regulate surrogacy. The pretext invoked in Greece, a European country that should not be emulated, was the altruism of women. The practice in Greece is legal because it is solely altruistic, which means the surrogate mother is not paid. However, this claim is an assumed lie, as is seen in the documentary Greece, The Price of a Child, in France, Grèce, Le Prix d'un Enfant, from 2016, in which Ekaterina Fundetaki, a law professor and advisor for the drafting of the law, 2015, admits. They say it's altruism so that the law will pass. But you have to be lucid, she said. If the woman is not paid, either is the black market or there are not enough women. If there are not enough women, it clearly shows that it is not in the interest of women. And the words of this academic show just as well that what the Greece law defends is the market and the interest of the client, and in no way the emancipation of women. By the way, the majority of surrogate motherhood in Greece are migrant women from Albania, Moldova, Ukraine, Romania, and so on and so forth. The opportunity to protect women, all women, from their commodification must be guaranteed at European level. It is here that the intrinsic violence of these practices must be recognized. We have all the expertise to prove it and to help European Parliament to better understand why it is violence and fought against, notably in the text who will be voted next, the directive on violence against women. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anna, for this presentation. And now we would like to address another topic, which is very actual in our context. Ukraine has fostered tremendous levels of trafficking for sexual exploitation of Ukrainian women and girls. And actually, a recent study from the OSCE showed that there was, since the war in Ukraine, a 600% increase in online searches with words such as Ukrainian, refugee, porn, and rape associated. So we have Julia Dorova, who can maybe address this topic a little bit more on why demand fosters trafficking for sexual exploitation and how it has impacted the situation in Ukraine.
I stay because I'm sick 2 days. It's much better for me, okay? No problem.
That's perfect.
Okay. Okay. I'm Yulia Dorokho. I'm from Ukraine. I'm a lawyer. I'm a leader of NGO women who worked in prostitution. I say small. Before, when the first organization in Ukraine, Сейчас пою, is first organization in history of Ukrainian that we get it before we say sex workers. We have long history, 15 years, now 6 going. For first, when we get it, we have experience or sex workers Israeli. We think about legalization. This is the best way. When we learn, when we grow, we understand this is no way this. And we have different law in not look like for your for country in European. We have special administrative law, criminal law, when we first get it, we think how safe life, how talk about rights, and after this, step by step, we grow and understand what it's really nice for us, how it's really protect us, and we understand about manipulation, about decriminalization, legalization. We understand when people talk about legalization, this is no punish, but this is the words manipulation. Before, I'm members of NSVP and SWAN. This is European network. But after, when I understand this is bullshit, excuse me, it's not protected us. This is protected only pimps and push their his money, his business, not care for us. Put inside in the law the word sex workers. We need a lot of women, simple women, don't understand what it means. And step by step, we grow. And sometimes I say sex workers because this is inside my mind. Apologize for this, but I'm excuse me, sometimes I make mistakes. The first of history of Ukrainian, the march, the peace march of prostitutions near the government, in the government parliaments and ministry. And the first we talk about, in Soviet Union, no prostitutions. Nobody talk about us, not think about healthy, but why punish us? Why? Because we talk about, we have in administry paragraph, it's small punish, small money, like the 2 or 5 euro. But this is the manipulation and pressures from the police, because young women stay in streets, or pimp say, okay, 1 or 2 times you do it this for us, I'm safe your, and half me, half you. But when catch the police, she's the sex survival. She's slader, sex slader, till years. When police call, she must do it what he wants. And this is a big problem in all over the world. Okay, next. I took a long time about this because I have a big experience, because I'm grow and go to the I not have education before 40 lawyer. I'm go find the education and protected woman. Doesn't matter. She stay in streets. I mean, she asked the help. Okay, we help. prostitutions, uses drugs, doesn't matter. This is the woman. First of all, she needed help. We must support she. Okay. I think I talk about this one more. When we go to the parliaments, we get up the topic about we here, please look for us and listen us. Listen us, because no more we live like this. You must change, because the police pressures us, because we investigation the results of courts for this is administrative law. How many really case like this? Because and it's very interesting. The punish small, but this is inside the case in the police server. When next time something wrong, the police take this as information and pressures and manipulation. Как будет не преследовать, а вымогательство. Excuse me, my English sometimes.
I understand.
Thank you for and she helps every time. The policy give the money, or and send the letter for your family, or institute, or job. Life is broke after this. This is small money, but it's really this a big trouble. We talk about this. If we understand, we not change the peace right now, but step by step. And in my country, the law is perfect, but how uses this and how the police pressures for us and every time manipulation for us, because who speak about girls, speak about children, but when speak about prostitutions, there's something dirty. This is not this is the mind inside this simple people who sit near the TV. When this is woman prostitutions, he know what she doing. She know what after. No, you know, you have experience about this. Nobody know what after. And when deputies, government not think about this, not care, step by step, we move for good way. Okay, next. When we talk about the war, and you know a lot of and listen a lot of about Ukrainian situation. The war is not stopped today or after 1 year. I don't know how long this, but now 15 million refugees escape and escaped one more and more and more, because now bomb attacks every day. Price get up, people don't have flats, don't have job. Okay, I know a lot of women who have the business and leave the prostitution, but now return because no food, children needed to eat, and I think you understand what the matter for us. And when a lot of women disappear in the board, because when the first month the panic, people escape, would stay for this dress, take the children and run away. 9 hours stay near the board when cross. This is it's a very bad situation for us. In this situation, a lot of pimps and people who make their business for slavers catch the woman and sail for the brothels or for the sex slave. And nobody know where's this woman is disappear. I say example. I stay in Brussels, yes? Nobody know about me. I am alone. Who helped me when something wrong with me? Some government control this? No. Police control this? No. We have last evening the good experience, the good good example when we sit together in the evening, a lot of people, one man catch the back from one hour. Nobody help, nobody stop him. But this is the public territory. You understand what I mean? Because when we change a lot of, we must think about the altogether how change the situation, and think about all of us, because everybody have experience, but experience is different. You all together we change this. Okay, and this is the small calculators about how much people when refugees. This is women and children, because for our law, the men not cross the board after 18 and before the 60. This is 90% women and children. And you understand, we stay in European. Altogether we have a problem, but different problem because don't know language, don't know law, and psychology, mentality, healthy, like zero. Because I feel, I'm refugees too, but I feel every time for the stress, because this is not my house. People friendly for me, but I live, I'm every time think about my members. I think about my family, my friends who stay in Ukrainian, in different countries too have a lot of problem. Yeah, I want help for all, but impossible for me. I feel I live like one legs, not stay two legs, one like this. And the same different women, the same feel like me. I say what I feel. Okay, no, this is situation. And when you see situation in Ukrainian, this is in Kiev, but till this is here, we help for no, doesn't matter where I'm staying. I help for women, for the food, for the milk, for the children, pampers and so on. All together with women, get it and do it this. Nobody help for us, but we do it this because we must. Because we help for all.
It's complete shortly.
Okay. And when talk about the pimps, today a lot of people speak about how pimps manipulation for women. We have a lot of information in newspaper and TV and magazine about is a bad Ukrainian woman is prostitutions. It's network of prostitutions. How doing this? Nobody say. How this is woman involved in this is network? Nobody talk about bad Ukrainian woman. We're not bad. We're good. Okay, next. And I have some proposition how they change this. Everyone who's staying here, it's a leader of network, leader of NGO, activity personal. Now we have a good chance connect and know face to face what he, and we all together for one idea. needed helps for the language, needed help for the network, all work together, change the law for advocacy and mobilization for us. And I think very important, their lawyer help. Very important. I have a lot of speech, but I understand you tired. Conclusion this, I'm specially come here because this is very important for me, important for my members, important for Ukrainian women. I think we all together, the big power. Today I have a proof in European Parliament when the first we see cold face after our speech. Warm, 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 burn. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yulia. And we have 20 minutes left, so I'm sorry, I will have to rush a little bit the other panelists to shorten their presentation. I will now give the floor to Ezoe Agatis, and we know that the European Parliament right now is reviewing a proposal, which is the Directive on Violence Against Women, and it includes the criminalization of pimping, which is an amendment that all of us collectively pushed for. We are hoping that the European Parliament can pass this provision, but we know that there is a counter amendment aiming to criminalize forced prostitution. So I wanted to discuss with you, Ezoe, as in, can you touch upon why prostitution and trafficking are not separate, totally separate entities and realities, and why it is also important to speak with UN agreed language on prostitution and human rights language on prostitution and not sex work?
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Today is like, I was feeling a bit tired, but all of this activism has kind of pumped me up, and it gives me hope, because sometimes when you see what's going on, talking about pornography, talking of surrogacy and the rest, one can get really discouraged because there's so much with regards to women. And then you find that a lot of that horror is packaged very nicely with a lot of beautiful communications language to make us believe that, oh, it's something that gives you power. It's something that gives you, what's that word now? Women's, the word escapes me, empowerment, etc., etc. And, oh, on one hand, you have this dividing line. On that side of the fence, well, it's sex work, it's work like any other kind of thing. On this side, oh, that's trafficking, that's different. You shouldn't, confound both of them. I'm head of an organization that works with survivors and victims of sex trafficking. And we know that there's no difference between it. Why is that? Most of the women, when they leave, when they are taken from their countries, a lot of them, most of those that come to us are Nigerians. We also have a lot of women from Eastern Europe and some from North Africa. They are promised that when they come to Europe, they are coming into paradise, to get money, to work, etc., etc., and they come. And so there are different kinds of trafficking. But for women, all of that trafficking almost always, if not exclusively, ends also in sex trafficking. And then you find out that the end result of trafficking is what? Prostitution. Because it is prostitution that needs that feeder from sex trafficking to ensure that more new blood, different kinds, stereotypes, the racialization of prostitution is satisfied, because the demand continues to change, the bar continues to go higher, and so they bring in other women and say they should come into prostitution. So the question of saying it is forced or not forced doesn't make sense, because we're talking about the same point, exactly the same thing. It's just a question of a slight change of the name, a slight change of the terminology.
which also brings us to that question of terminology, the importance of terminology. The myth that, you see, they say it's sex work. What is work? Work is something that gives you dignity. It's something that is dignified. If we talk about the horrors of prostitution, nobody wants to go there. But if we take it up and cover it in beautiful language and say, oh, it's a job, it's work, why not? It becomes different. And people are gaslighted into believing, that narrative. And this is where their strength lies, because they are selling lies. They are selling empty words for truth, but using that kind of language that people are used to hearing. And of course, the question of women's roles, the way patriarchy has been so powerful in subjugating women, in grooming women into believing that their own exploitation is actually what makes them strong. So how can you talk of a woman who is empowered in prostitution if she's not the one who decides what happens? I mean, it's a question, for instance, an economic truth. If I go into a shop and I have money in my hand, it's not the shop owner who's going to tell me what I will buy. I'm the one who's going to say, with my money in my hand, I want A, B, C, D. It's the same thing in prostitution. It's not the women who are empowered to determine what is done to them. It's what the buyer says he wants, that is going to be the overriding thing. So this is why we need to recognize that, and we need to use the correct language that shows the violence of prostitution, that really exposes it and exposes that gaslighting that we are all being subjected to, And young people, unfortunately, are falling victim to all of this, because the internet is a beautiful thing, but the internet is also a very, very dangerous world for young people, because a lot of stuff is out there, lies. And now we have this added thing of AI. I'm really frightened to think of where that's going to take our young people. Mm-hmm. Children are being groomed from childhood to believe what is out there. And this is where our work is cut out for us, to come together, to do more of these kinds, even though we have, the resources that is available to the other side, we don't have that resources, but we have our strength, we have the truth that is on our part, And if you look also at a lot of the international legal instruments out there, the language is already there that we need to use to demonstrate that there's no separation between these two. It's one and the same thing, the same faces. So when Europe wants to make a decision, there's something else I just wanted to say about pimping. When they say that, for instance, the German law will ensure that pimps will no longer be in the line, pimps become businessmen. They are now businessmen. While women will be protected and they don't have to have pimps, they can be business women in their own rights working together. There was a website I was introduced to, a German website, where one of the pimps on the website said, that's a myth, that can happen. That in Germany, it's not true that the women will be able to be there, quote and unquote, work without pimps, because it's not safe, one. They will not be able to get any kind of clients without pimps. So you find that is a context that legitimizes the exploitation of women, that makes what is normally a criminal activity to become a legal activity, now becomes a legalized form of activity. So this is part of that hypocrisy that you see when the correct words are not being used, when what is an exploitation is now being recognized and described as work. And we are happy to find one light in our own context in Italy, where the Italian Court of Cassation, that's the Italian Supreme Court, in 2019, while deciding on the case that started out as a case of the grooming of some teenagers as quote unquote escorts and sex workers in Italy. Under Italian law, prostitution is not a crime. It is the exploitation of the prostitution of others as a crime. The 1958 Merlin law that decriminalized women in prostitution and punishes the exploitation of their exploitation. And these groomers were now trying to say that these children are sex workers that have the right to exercise their right to work, and that prostitution is sex work and is work as normal. Anyway, I won't go into the details except to say that when it reached the Supreme Court said that prostitution as an activity does not dignify women. It removes the human dignity. It's detrimental to the human dignity of women and should never be considered as work, because work dignifies, but prostitution does not. It's not every activity that should be commercialized. There are certain activities in the human system that should be recognized as inviolable, as not subject to commercialization, that must not be subject to commercialization. And the human body should be one of that in that context. And this is a very important work for us. So I know you want to finish. My last word is that if Europe is really serious about fighting sex trafficking, then they have to recognize prostitution as the violence that it is and not continue to call it work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zoe, for your presentation, and I'm sorry to have to rush you a little. Now, on to Mireia Crespo, who is the director of ISALA. As you know, in Belgium, we as abolitionists are in hostile territory. Belgium has decriminalized pimping, except when pimps make abnormal profits. Go figure what that is. And I think one number that is very speaking is actually one that was published by Isala a few years ago, when it showed that in the very street of Ascot, where there is window prostitution, each woman has to pay 250 euros per day to rent the window, which means that it would account for more than 7,500 euros per month if that woman rents the window every day. So this is the amount of money that they have to give to the pimps, the brothel owner. And this would also mean that they would have to endure 150 unpaid sexual acts before earning a single euro. So that is the reality of pimping in Belgium, and I'm sure Mireia can give us some very interesting presentation about that.
Yes, thank you. So I will try to be very brief, okay? So in Belgium, so I represent Isala, who supports prostituted women in Brussels. We are based here in Brussels. And it's been 10 years since we exist, so we have known the Belgian system quite well. And since last year, since 2021, we have been very involved in this change of legislation. A very brief picture of the prostitution areas in Brussels or in Belgium, and everybody knows where there are. You might know Rue d'Ascot, close to Gare du Nord, but there are all their surrounding streets. There are the Villa Tinto in Antwerp, which is like a very, very well-known neighborhood where the big prostitution mafia is. But there are also brothels in the French border, for instance. So everybody knows where the prostitution areas are. And for decades, these prostitution places were illegal, like literally illegal. We had a penal code that we could use, the Belgian authorities could use to just close down these places, right? But nothing was done. We knew also that these places were places where women were exploited. We know that the legal status of the bars in Rue d'Ascot is like débit de boisson, so like bars, but we know that the women inside there have like 12-hour shifts, so it's completely, the police could really just knock down these places immediately with the penal code. And the problem was that for many years, so
there was this sentence that said, well, pimping is illegal, but when it's when it's bars and when it's rooms and when it's proxénétisme immobilier, then it's only legal if the profit is abnormal. So this notion of abnormal profit served the pimps and the traffickers to get installed in the Belgian territory. Since June last year, so we are coming to the first anniversary of this law in 1 week. What they did is basically they criminalized pimping, saying, no, this penal code is just too old, and they rephrased. So they removed any mention to the UN standards, the UN Convention. And they said, well, now pimping will be legal. So hiring someone for the prostitution to exploit their prostitution will be legal under certain conditions, and also it will be legal unless you make an abnormal profit. And as Emma was saying, we know that the reality is that women in those windows already pay an abnormal profit, but nothing is done, right? So this notion of abnormal profit hasn't even been defined, has never served to punish a pimp, and it has been denounced by many feminist organizations, but they really stick to it. Now, what has happened since then? So we know that now it's going to be very difficult for prostituted persons to denounce their pimps and to punish a pimp, because now they will have to prove that he obtained an abnormal profit from the exploitation, so which is like very difficult, if not impossible for them. But then, so in practically, we know that before pimps were. There was a lot of impunity and they were really tolerated. So practically they just have, well, as you were saying, they are just like businessmen, right? There's the good pimps that take a normal profit of prostitution and the bad ones. And what we've felt as well is that there is a very important normative effect of the law. So now, since June 2022, prostitution is legal in Belgium. So beyond the legal effects and beyond the effects, the direct effects on women that are in prostitution, it's really so prostitution. It has really had an effect of normalizing prostitution, banalizing prostitution. Now prostitution is cool. Now prostitution is legal. And of course, now pimps want to come to Belgium to make more money. As a little anecdote, we have been called by startups that want to put in contact clients with prostituted women. So they were, I mean, they are really counting on the money that they're going to earn with this as well. So we foresee that trafficking will also increase, and we are also very worried about the effects that this will have on youth, because we know as well that there are even organizations that do say adresse in English. Sexuality education that are starting to speak about prostitution as a form of as a sexual behavior that some young teenagers have. So this has really an impact on the whole of society. And on the other hand, what we've seen is that Belgium, so on the one hand, they really assume this, we decriminalize pimping, sex work is work. But on the other hand, they say, yes, but let's help people, women that want to exit prostitution. And there have been timid attempts of that. We have managed a shelter for 3 years, and we are very proud of that. But at the same time, we recognize that this is just a very limited experience.
and that today there is no center, no shelter, no one that where prostituted women can go to be protected and to recover and to really exit prostitution. So this is completely absurd. I mean, even if in 10 years Belgium manages to set up a shelter, I mean, there will be more people, more women recruited into prostitution, more women coming in. So we are not really tackling the roots of the problem, right? And this is why the equality model should be as a whole, not as just some patches and some measures, that as a whole we need to take the equality model, punishing pimps, protecting women, and also attacking the demand, which is like completely absent in Belgium in terms of policies. So yeah, it's quite a difficult environment. It's quite a hostile environment, and yeah, now let's hope that at least we can move in Belgium from on the side of creating shelters and creating support and exiting people exiting prostitution, although the legal framework is really an obstacle. Thank you.
And now, last but not least, before we conclude our event, we have two expert survivors from Sweden, a country that has adopted the equality model back in 1999, a country also that has one of the highest gender equality in the world. And it's no coincidence that they were the pioneer in adopting this legislation. So we are hearing from Eileen Wallin and Carolina Larsson from Interdinova, so not sure who are the first survivor-led organizations from Sweden.
Hi, thank you for being here and prioritize the voices of survivors. We were hoping to see more MEPs in the room, and this speech is aimed at them. My name is Elin. I'm 21 years old and I live in Sweden. I was a victim of sexual exploitation as a child. Today I'm almost finished with my teacher degree, and I'm also a board member in the Swedish-based survival organization Interdinova. In English, not your whore. And this is Carolina, who is also a board member. And I will start to talk about our organization. Our organization was founded in connection to Me Too. It all started as a rebellion and a hashtag. We felt that we were a group that was not included in the violence that was talked about with Me Too. The rebellion eventually evolved and grew into the organization that we are today. We work by supporting, informing, and influencing the public opinion. Today, we are a network consisting of over 150 members who support each other in the physiological and practical aspect of being exploited through prostitution. We support each other in many ways, for example, through a chat called Where Am I? In that chat, those who are actively selling share their location, informing during meetups so that other members can keep track of whatever the seller is safe or not. We also help each other by giving support during police reports and other social matters. Our members are all survivors of prostitution and consist exclusively of women, non-binary, and transgender people. We are out lecturing about our experience and our political demands in Sweden. We advocate by writing debate articles, by participating in the media, and publishing on our Instagram page, where we currently reach around 42,000 followers. Our vision is a world where no one is exploited in the sex trade. We support the equality model policy that is based on the principle that it is legal to sell but illegal to buy sexual acts. We believe that all women in the sex trade are victims of violence and that consent can never be bought.
You have to speak strongly.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about a bit more later about why we stand behind the equality model as survivors. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about my own experience. So in my early 20s, I felt very defeated by my whole life and myself, and also defeated by the healthcare system, because I was diagnosed with eating disorder and was told that it was a chronic condition and that I would never have get treatment to be able to recover from that. But I also felt like defeated by myself because I could not just pick myself together and hold on a job, earn an income, study like people around me did. So the first man that paid to have sex with me had an office in my hometown. I never found out what his field of work was, or why we were like always alone in this big office building. I just know that he met other girls there as well. And the thing I remember most about our meetings there was like when you every time we met up outside, and then he led me upstairs to his office, and there was this smell in the hallway. At the first thing every time he opened the door and we led up the stairway, there was this smell, and it was almost okay up until that point, but when every time I feel that smell, it was the feeling of like I want to turn around and run away from here. His first and only question to me when we met was about my age. So he asked me if I was really an adult over 18. So I said yes, and he seemed calmed by that because, quote, you look about the same age as my daughter. He also had a picture of his daughter in his office where we always met. So it was never my choice. My first choice was not to be penetrated by a man older than my father to earn an income. All I wanted was an income that matched that my friends and family members. To feel like I was just not a burden on the welfare system or society, because I was provided with a basic economic support due to my health issues, but that was like the bare minimum. And at the same time, I saw my friends and family members living a life with a completely different standard than me, and I didn't see how that would change in the future. So I want to afford social activities, hobbies, and small luxury choices to buy that dress you see at H&M and have. In the long run, I wanted to afford to make mistakes again and gain a collection of lessons in life. But the lessons that I learned instead was something different than that of my peers, because I learned how to create a whole new identity to show the buyers. I learned that having a penis in my penis so deep down in my throat that I could not breathe was expected of me. I learned that my body was no more than a commodity for men to use and dispose. And now, even if this is all past tense, every single time that I found myself in a situation where I worry about my income and my economic situation, it feels like I get like this line of thought in my head. I need to start selling sex again. I know I can physically do it, but I really do not want to. And it feels like that is an overshadowing threat that always, I just always carry it with me. So the question is to, if that is still, is that situation still a matter of free choice? Because I don't feel like it is a free choice that I made. And now I want to ask Elin to tell her story.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to answer, or maybe did I have a choice? I started selling as a child, and before I started selling, I had experience of being sexually abused. So I'm in my first year of high school. I'm in a forest north of Stockholm in Sweden. I'm meeting my fourth sex buyer ever. All I feel is his weight over my body and the threatening words about how he will kill me. I don't know if I will get out there alive. I don't receive any money afterwards. I am raped, abused, and humiliated. In the evening, I sit at my dinner table with my family, and they wonder how school was, and I was quiet. 1 year goes by. I'm 16 years old, and I have lost count of how many I have met since the forest. Another time, the sex buyer I meet wants me to pretend to be a 5-year-old girl. I'm afraid to say no. I have tried no before and know it can end badly. So I'm silent again. I am 17 years old. At my next therapy session, I decide to not be silent anymore. So I found the courage to tell my psychologist that I'm in prostitution. But the support I receive is non-existent. The understanding does not exist. Other support services are not offered. I turn 18 and I can no longer continue with my psychologist. Why? Because she has only accepted patients who are not yet of legal age. So there I am, left alone because I've turned 18. I have nowhere to turn and no one to call me. For 4 years, I was exposed to physical, psychological, and sexual violence on a weekly basis. Grown men of all social backgrounds claim the right to buy my body. Regulate, perhaps you think. Then the condition would have been improved. No, I say. My biggest wounds don't come from physical violence. It comes from my body chasing to belong to me and the memories of having my basic rights taken away from me, that I'm not for sale.
So we have this situation where why do we, as survivors and representatives of survivors, stand behind the equality model? So the most simple answer to that question is like we put the blame where the blame belongs, on the perpetrator and not on women in challenging situations in life. But also like it challenges in the long term. It's well, I'm really sorry, I'm really nervous.
It's okay.
But yes, but like the Swedish, since we had the equality model in Sweden for so long, it has changed the norms in our society. So it is not it's not socially accepted to tell anyone that you have bought sex. It's not. It's seen down on. So that is like a big result of the equality model. And having the support from your society is essential for your ability to process and understand and also heal from what you've been through. Because if your country society doesn't acknowledge that you have been in a very hard position, you cannot process that yourself. It's really, you can, but it's really hard. And we have, as Elin said before, over 150 members, and all of us agree that prostitution is not a free choice. It's a sort of a lack of opportunities or lack of choice. And it is oppression, it is violence, and we are 150 people with our own experiences. That all we stand behind this. All of us. It's not up for debate. So we urge the European Parliament to vote and support the proposal to criminalize the buying and pimping of sexual acts. Even if a few countries adopt the equality model, like for the situation we have right now. Exploitation does not have borders, and we have free movement in the European Union, which means that perpetrators can just avoid accountability by crossing the border and go and it's just you just take the train. I live in South Sweden, and if you just take the train to Copenhagen, it's you don't get a punishment. So it's that easy. And in Sweden, 1 out of 10 men have bought sex. But we also know that 85% of those men have done so abroad. So what is the point of criminalizing the buying and pimping of others in a few countries when men can just take the train and continue to exploit other women in their near proximity?
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for these stories that you shared with us. We are honored that you chose to share them with us, and also honored to have your presence and your voices calling for the equality model. On this, we are about to conclude this day of action, and I want to stress how much we felt honored to have the voices from survivors from all over the European continent, and also to have survivors attending that did not speak, but we see you and we were so happy that you came for this day of action. A special thanks to the European Network of Migrant Women who gathered us all together for this event. To Anna, Lisa, Rihanna, Proha, Diep, and all of the staff. Thank you also to all of the other sponsors of the event, the Swedish Women's Lobby, Space International, my organization CAP, and SIAMS also.
Equality Now.
Equality Now, yes. We were so thrilled to be able to organize this. And I know that Julia, we mentioned earlier at lunch that there are never men in these kind of events. There are never men when we speak about violence against women, about male privilege. But I also think that it's in these spaces between women where we kind of initiate revolutions.
Yes.
When we have this sisterhood that pushes us to gain our own rights without actually having men claiming our rights for us.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we have the opportunity to continue doing that. So then
Yes.
let's do it. And for a Europe free from prostitution.
Yeah.
And the whole live stream of the event and of the conference is available on YouTube, thanks to Adriana. So you can watch it whenever you want, and giving the floor to Alisa.
Thank you. Just to conclude in just a few words, the mobilization is not over because the votes will take place in the committees at the end of June and in plenary, we think, in July. So we have launched a video campaign on our social media, the European Network of Migrant Women, also shared by our partners. So if you want to participate, if you want to engage, if you want to brainstorm with us on how to push the MEPs to pass these amendments and to adopt the equality model approach in the initiative report on prostitution, please contact us. Let's work together. Let's continue engaging. And thank you so much for everything today. I think it was an amazing experience to have you all here.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I give you a hand?